Hi, my name is Courtney, and today we go over with you guys a 26 Ruby life pools that we ran a couple weeks ago on the affixes Tyrannical, Grievous, and Bursting. Before I get into the video, I do want to mention that down below I'm going to have timestamps if you just want to go see a boss. I do have individual boss guides as well for the first two bosses in this dungeon, though I don't have a third boss guide if you're just looking for individual guides on certain bosses that you struggle with. And also before we start the key, I do want to talk about my talents because I do run a different build in here. So this is usually the build that I run. It looks something like this. It is what I call the bitch build because I am not running Life Force Mender or Life Giver's Flame inside of Ruby. So I tend to do this inside of Ruby because the timer is super free. Like, you're gonna see that we have plenty of time and we're not really in a rush. We're not doing anything too risky in this dungeon in order to make up time. And so usually it's safer just for me to take a heavier healing build and not worry as much about damage. Also, you spend a lot of globals in this dungeon doing damage because outside of like the first area of trash, like after the first boss and beyond, like all the trash just does heavy AoE damage. So I would recommend if there's any dungeon where you feel like you need to go out of damage and into healing, it might be this one. Okay, now getting into the video. So starting off, the key is already in the hole and we pre-shroud this key. The reason we do that is because we want to skip this first rock guy, and then also we want to have shroud up to skip the second rock guy. You don't need shroud to skip the second rock guy, but it makes it so that you don't have to wait on the pat in order to skip them, and it's going to save you time. So we do is we pre-shroud the Druid Roars. So if you hover inside of a shroud, it does take you out of the shroud. So that's always like hover and dash like straight out of the wall so that I don't have to do it near the rock guy. So I hover ahead and we're shrouding past this rock guy, and then we're doing a big pull here. Again, it is Bursting, Raging, Grievous. So not Raging, sorry, Bursting, Grievous, Tyrannical. Sorry, I was Raging last week. We do lust this first pull. That's the other kind of nice thing about playing the healing build, is that I'm not so scared of the first boss, so it's totally fine for us to lust the first pull, because this actually is a scary pull for our take. There's like a lot of stops required. Definitely the Enhancement Shaman versus when we don't have the Enhancement Shaman. The Enhanced Shaman makes this pull so much easier for getting the stops on those Earth Shapers that you need. As you can see, he did the Thunderstorm there, he'll Sunder, and he has a bunch of other knocks and stuns and stuff that are so helpful, and it's a big reason why they are meta right now, is for their ability to do good CC. On this first pull, mostly just keeping an eye on my tank and getting ready for bursting here after this thundering damage is done, and making sure if I need to, I'm getting any of these tectonic slams. If you aren't aware, there are the Chill Weavers put out shields. If they put a shield on the Earth Shaper, then the only thing that can stop an Earth Shaper from casting is a knockup. So like something like a stun isn't going to work on them. So the only thing that could stop them in that case is my tail swipe, my knockup, which I just used, or a knockup from an Enhancement Shaman or a Typhoon. So anything like that will stop it, but you have to look out for the shielded ones, because as an evoker, those are the ones that you're the most apt to be able to help stop, or something like the Hodge or like the Rogue. Like the Hodge from the Paladin or the Rogue isn't able to stop those. It's on you guys that have the displacement abilities to be able to stop those, or on being able to purge them if you have a class that can purge, so that you can stop them with another spell. Outside of that, looks like we are going to have one slime going off. Thankfully, it is tyrannical, so it doesn't really matter. We'll probably get some nice rolling going here. We have a nice stasis setup though. Actually, no. Extreme self-control out of my group here. That absolutely owns. And then after this pull is when we're going to be shrouding. So I'm going to kind of skip it. So we get ready, we shroud. Normally, you could like sap this guy if you pulled this 2-pack, and then hug right when he's in the right pack. I mean the right pat. However, we like saving shroud so that we don't have to wait on the pat, because you could lose a long time, especially in this kind of pat, waiting for him. And these guys are really an efficient count. You of course have to pull this mini boss. If you try pulling the boss up, pulling the mini boss, he will still pull, so there's no way to skip him. He also has true sight, so it'd be really hard to skip him even if the dungeon let you. On this pull, you are just keeping a close eye on your tank for when the tank buster comes from this mini boss here. It really hurts. It's also annoying because you're trying to dodge at the same time. We also have these extra mobs here doing a little bit of extra damage to him. Again, not fortified, so not as scary as it's going to be on other weeks, but this week I still need to make sure I'm keeping an eye on him. He's trying to save his wings and his divine toll and everything he can for the boss, especially towards the end of this mini boss is when I need to keep the closest eye on the tank. Other than that, not too much finesse on this little mini boss. He just takes forever for some reason. Okay, so on pull, what we do is we go over and we activate these whelps onto the boss. The reason we're doing that is because it gives us funnel damage. So we have Enhanced Shaman, which like does really well with funnel damage because they have P-Wave every 30 seconds. And then also Sub Rogue, of course, likes their funnel. And the Boomkin, he would like to press Starfall, but he's ethical and he's going to let them have their funnel here. And I'm getting a drink before we start. Making my Rogue come out to clear me. Thank you, sir. And then getting started on the boss. Again, in case you missed at the beginning, I do have just like an individual, just like boss guide just on this boss. If you struggle to heal this boss as a preservation evoker, but I'm going to talk about how I healed it here still, just not in as much detail as I do in that other video. The first chill storm that always goes out is when I activate, or I set up my first stasis. The second chill storm is when I activate it. And then right after that, usually when we get the intermission phase, and there's usually an Emerald Communion or Rewind, I always prefer to do Emerald Communion first if I can. And the chill storm after that, usually Zephyr. Okay, so there I just set up my first stasis. It was just a VE into a Dream Breath into... Sometimes my Vigor is wrong, so I'm not actually sure if I did Living Flame or if I did Living Flame on the boss and then I Spirit Bloomed. I did one or the others of those, but either way, because I charge up the Dream Breath to 3 in order to do enough burst healing before the Chill Storm detonates, it's going to be enough healing with that alone. So in this case, I already have all my reversions out. I get the thing, so I'm going to VE to get out of this every time. Get ahead, turn around, aim my Dream Breath, activate my stasis, and that is enough for us to live. Okay, now we are going to get these Hail Bombs, and she's going to push. At least I hope she's going to push before we get this third Chill Storm. Sometimes we do get a third Chill Storm before the ads, but not often. Oh, we are going to get this Chill Storm. Okay, so this is normally the one that I would do after the first intermission, so I do Zephyr this one. This is a little bit awkward for me, especially with thundering. Oh, yep, this one's spooky. My Druid went Bear. That was a good idea. So I tipped the scales of Spirit Bloom on that one, so I didn't actually have to go Bear, but it was definitely a spooky spot to be in if I didn't have a tip the scales there. I maybe would have had to use like Rewind or something to get through that, which would have sucked. But the Zephyr also helps a lot. So here we are, we're doing the intermission. I end up rewinding, and that is because my VE... Alright, yeah, I can see what happened. Because you get that, if you get that third Chill Storm, when this happens, my VE isn't up. So I can't do a Life Bind into an Emerald Communion here in time. So it looks like I just am DPS the boss, gonna clear my thundering, and I want to like ideally VE right there in Emerald Communion, but it's like barely off, so I just have to rewind there. So when we get that third Chill Storm, it really sucks, and I do end up having to use rewind here, which is fine. Glad that I have both those buttons available, and then I can just Emerald Communion the next one. But most likely I'm going to be instead stasising the next one. That is ideally what I do. Though my timings here are a bit different because I normally only get the 2 Chill Storms, so I could end up Emerald Communion before that as well. This was like a week and a half ago, so I'm trying to remember like I kill this boss so many times a week, what I do each time, because sometimes the timings are just different. Okay, so Tank definitely taking a decent amount of damage here. I need to make sure... Oh, he freed himself, so I didn't have to dispel him there. That's something that I definitely struggle with, is making sure I'm dispelling him all the time, especially with mana on this fight. End up casting a lot of manual echoes, and then I don't get to disintegrate enough, which is kind of bad. So I get the Chill Storm here. I'm going to VE back in. Living Flame. And this is definitely like one of those situations where I was looking at my CDs before and I told them that I didn't have as heavy of healing as usual. I didn't have Dream Breath or Spirit Bloom there coming out of that. And then on this next one is when I'm probably going to be looking to set up my stasis. Or actually we're getting the whelps, so I'm going to set up my stasis in this. I couldn't set up my stasis on the one before because I didn't have Dream Breath or Spirit Bloom. But I could also just Emerald Communion this. So I stasis. Okay, yes, I'm activating my stasis. I VE. I'll Dream Breath. Oh no, I'm going to Emerald Communion and then I'll finish setting up my stasis. Okay, that's a good choice. Looks like we break the shield, so got through that using Emerald Communion, set up my stasis so that I have something for the next Chill Storm. I also, if I didn't have stasis set up here, could just press Zephyr on the next one, but I'll probably save it since I have stasis here. Doing some good AoE damage. Making sure I'm VEing my tank to give him good healing here because he is taking a lot of damage. It's not just about keeping the group alive. Whew, my group gets slow. Boss is at 28%, so I'm imagining we're getting about 3 more Chill Storms. So the nice thing is if you Emerald Communion that second one, then your like Emerald Communion would come up like either this one or the one after. But since I rewinded that one, I'm not going to get another Emerald Community here, which kind of sucks, but it's fine because I have Tip the Scales again, and I also have Zephyr available, and right now we have AG rolling. And we're also going to pull more Funnel, of course, which means Dispelling and tank healing when I don't have that much mana left, only 15%. I do remember from this one that at the end, I was telling my group, like, I was trying to tell my group I had, like, no mana, and they couldn't understand what I was saying. So I Zephyr this one, and I'm just gonna kind of Living Flame myself a little bit, and we're doing fine on this one, too. We have Bark Skin, looking good. So it looks like we're getting one more, and my mana is really low. So I think I just tell them all they need to, like, press their defensives here. The thing is, after this pull, we are doing Thunderhead plus the pad on the other side, you'll see in a second. So not everybody wants to actually, like, even though it's like, oh, end of the boss fight, just like press your buttons, like not using like wall and like stuff like that. They don't want to because they want to save it for Thunderhead, and they don't need it to live, so it's fine. Okay, so now we're done with this boss. We go ahead, we get up here. We're pulling Thunderhead and we're dragging him to the other side. So on Fortified weeks, we actually don't pull any of these dragons, but on Tyrannical weeks, it's fine to pull a dragon, and it makes it easier to fight this second boss because then we're not so like cramped for space. So we pull Thunderhead and we're gonna pull the mobs over here. I would say doing this strat is fine. If not a little annoying because I'm greeting Thundering, not because it's hard. So I usually I set my stasis and there's a Dispel in there, which isn't the greatest thing, but you know, I just wanted to get it on CD. Mostly because I want to have it back for the first Inferno. For the first Inferno mob that we have to fight. And you guys all know how Thunder goes. You just instantly Dispel someone, leave it on whoever has a defensive available. So even though he pressed Bark right away, I have Renewing Blaze and Scales, and that's better than Bark. And I really don't have to heal myself. He also sacked me there, so I am like super chilling and just DPSing in this. Actually kind of bad that we use sack there, but I still have TD available if we need it for these next ones. But I'm not going to spend too much time because this is a beefy boy, and I don't think you guys want to watch us single target this guy down. I think that was a swirly mishap there. Unlucky. I actually didn't have that many defenses there. Maybe I should have left it on the shaman, but not a big deal. Okay, we're gonna back it up. Okay, so as far as these destroyers go, so again, this is not Fortified week, so it's not scary. It is a little bit scary though because it is Bursting Grievous. But these guys on Fortified, even though they've been nerfed several times, they're still super scary. My CD like rotation is basically the same though. I set up a stasis, I detonate a stasis, I use a Zephyr, and then I Emerald, and then we get to the next one. Then I set up a stasis, I detonate a stasis, and then I'll use my Rewind or a Tip the Scales or whatever it is, or I'll call for AG if we need it there. Be like, oh, I'm dry here. Like the number one thing here that I'm learning is just about communicating with your team so they know, because like they all have tools to live, but like if you have a bunch of healing for like 3 and then there's a 4th, you just don't tell me you have healing, that's not going to go well. So that's something that I'm working on, is being better at telling them how my healing is for the next upcoming like damage thing, especially in a dungeon like this where there's like so many instances of constant AoE on your group that like everybody needs lots of healing to get through. So that was just me detonating my stasis. Looks like we are going to be getting a 3rd here. The living bombs, it's normally like defensives first, and then we usually have like sack that we're rotating, and also I can use time dilation on someone for these. But usually what I do here, I'm not doing it right here, but most of the time what I do is whoever gets the debuff, I Verdant Embrace them right after it detonates, and then I press TA, and then I start charging up a Dream Breath, and then I detonate like double Dream Breath on everyone because of the echoes that's on them, instead of like relying on Lifeline healing on these for the most part. Although since it is I keep getting living bombs, so I can't show you an amazing example of this, and also I don't have Dream Breath up. That one was just Zephyr for the most part. Looks like we might get one more here, so I still have Tip the Scales available. And I do have Rewind available if we get this one here. But I'm going to staff this one. Looks like we're still going to get it. Oh, and we do have Spell Wording here. So we're going to get this one. And it's just going to be, because I didn't prep anything, it's going to be a Lifeline ramp. Totally fine, especially on Fortified weeks for that. This would just be me setting up Stasis, Lifeline into Dream Breath is fine here. And then probably my 3rd cast in here is just going to be a Temporal Anomaly. Like if my Shaman didn't have AG up here, I might take the time to put a Spirit Bloom in. I didn't actually, like, you get, like, again, you notice if you watch my videos, Stasis Wall is wrong. As you can see down here, there's only 2 balls above my head. I still have 1 more charge, and that last charge is going to be a TA, and I'll use that TA at the end of the next Inferno Core in order to get reversions out. Then we pull in these Flame Dancers, and we're mostly just worried about if bursting is going off during an Inferno Core or not. But other than that, pretty straightforward for these. I kind of get to get away without playing that well on these I'm looking at, and it's mostly just because it is tyrannical. On Fortified, I have to play a bit more carefully in order to do enough healing to get through these for sure. Okay, so going on to the boss. So this is the nerfed version of the boss. I did make a video pre-nerf, though, if you guys want to go check that out, on how to heal this, but I'll still talk through this a little bit, though I'm not going to go into as much detail, just going to talk about it before. But this first one is going to be me setting it. It's really simple. It's really similar to the Inferno Cores on the trash. First one is setting up a stasis. Second one is detonating stasis. Third one is going to be Zephyr plus AG. Fourth one might be Emerald Communion or Tip the Scales or Rewind, and then stasis back up. Or actually, it's set up stasis, detonate stasis, Zephyr, set up stasis, detonate stasis, and then it could be like Emerald Communion, Tip the Scales, Rewind, things like that in between. And again, just communicating with your group, telling them like, oh, you might need to cloak this one, you might need to bark this one. Well, he knows he has bark or sack for every single one. What am I saying? And the other thing that you're worrying about here is helping your tank out, because as hard as these Inferno Cores hit, it is also really hard for your tank to live during this. So usually the first one is my TD, so this one, since it's the second one, it's going to be my Dispel. So I'm going to be looking to Dispel him right here when he hits 3 stacks. It's a little bit sketchy doing that sometimes though, because as you can see, like I heal us through the last tick before I did it, but it's still a little bit global intensive in order to do it that way. This one is just set up a stasis again. Again, I'm not actually putting Living Flame in my stasis, it is just my weak aura bugging out. This one, just clearing, thundering. Yeah, and then I tip the Scales of Spirit Bloom on that one, because I don't have stasis or anything set up. No Zephyr, no AG. We have AG and Zephyr for the next one if we want it, and it's also when I can set up my next stasis. Yep, okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Again, if you want a more detailed explanation, go watch the guide, but I'm not going to go into too much because it's been nerfed now and she's really not that hard anymore. All right, going into the trash, this is like the same repeating thing. I'm going to probably set up a stasis on this one. Oh, actually I don't have stasis. The only thing I have available is Rewind and Emerald Communion, so I will probably Emerald Communion this. Yeah, I will Emerald Communion this because that is your shorter CD, so whenever I have the choice between Rewind or Emerald Communion, number one, EC is safer because you don't have to wait for the damage and then press it. And also Rewind is a longer CD, so I always like to use Emerald Communion first, get my mana back, get my nice little health bonus because I'm running that talent. Really nice. And then maybe this one. So the thing is, sometimes I set up a stasis on this one and sometimes I don't, because our next pull, depending on how much time we have or how come, like it depends on how many kicks we have actually, because sometimes we play double range, we pull the next 2 together or we don't, and sometimes we go around to the mini boss depending on if our boomkin has incarn and things like that. So sometimes I set up a stasis here, but I think I chose not to because sometimes it actually just gets wasted because we're just doing like a flame channeler pull and there's no actual like tempest channeler in there. Yeah, okay, the next pull, we pull everything together. So this one is a little bit spooky just because the hardest part about this on pull is dodging the swirlies from the guys, and then towards the end we're going to have to deal with bursting going out during a lightning storm. Let's see if that happens here at the end. It's not gonna be too bad. So these warriors are all dying. You can see right here, the storm is about to go off in 4 seconds here. Okay, so we are getting some bursting during this one. But it's not too bad because he dies. Okay. And then for the last mini boss, it's gonna be the same thing again. I usually stasis into detonate stasis, into Zephyr, into another like, in this case it'd be like Tip the Scales or Emerald Communion, into setting up stasis again. Like it is the same repeating cyclical thing in this dungeon because like the way the first boss AoE pattern and the Inferno Cores and the second boss and all of these guys, even though they're all different, like Chill Storm versus fire damage versus this is like nature lightning damage, it's all like the same type of just bursty healing that you need to do the whole time. Like once you learn how to heal it like in like one or the other, you can heal the whole dungeon basically by rotating your CDs that way. It is just about playing ahead and rotating them correctly and not like overthrowing CDs at certain things. Just knowing like how much healing do we need here to live and trying to save as much as you can for the next one. That is basically the name of the game in this dungeon. And it's not just this, it's also going to be this last boss during the spits, is planning things out like that. Pretty straightforward. We're going to go into the boss. So when you pull this boss, it is really helpful if you have this weak aura. I don't have it on my screen. My tank always just calls it for us. That tells us where to drop the spits. So as you know, Kyrraka is going to land. We're always trying to stand right in front of these two pillars. We want him to land here. And we're going to be dropping the first two people that get targeted with the spit are going to go over here on blue. And then the third person is going to go on green. And the fourth person is going to go kind of like far on blue. And that's because like the winds are a certain pattern and you want them to get pushed in a certain direction so they're not ever getting pushed into you. And the real sauce on this boss that most people know by now is when the dragon gets pushed below 50% is when the phase happens. So what happens is if you push her below 50% when she's just landed, then she finishes like her whole like RP on the ground doing her fire breath thing even when you're pushing her below 50%. So that is when you get your milk. Like you wait until she's like 51%. She lands, you lust, you get as low as you can so that you don't have to get as many Inferno cores in phase 2 as possible. So phase 1 is mostly just about us bringing in funnel, of course. There's a theme here that you bring funnel in a lot. Doing as much damage to the drag as we can slowly, but also cleaving this guy and making sure that we're going to have like all of our CDs line up with lust that's coming up in a minute when the dragon lands at a good time and pushing him then. That way it makes phase 2 easy. It makes the whole boss fight easy. I don't know why I clicked that. Oopsies. Spoilers. Okay, so I do just want to point out though that I think the biggest mistake that I find, and this is more on your DPS than it is on you, but it is kind of on you as well, is the first spits that go out. So many DPS do not want to press anything in this phase. However, I think especially when you're playing with an Evoker healer or I don't know, it's like literally anything. Like, it is hard to just have a bunch of single target healing ready. Like, it's easy in phase 2 to be like, okay, I'm setting up a stasis and a pre-spirit bloom, and I'm detonating the stasis. I'm zephyrine this one, I'm Emerald Community one, and then I'm rewinding one. To do that, to get like the whole group through it and be safe. However, it is not always as easy to do it in phase 1, and also after the first 2 flame spits on this fight, they always overlap with the interrupting cloud burst, and it's easy for someone to just get one banged if they're just being greedy and holding on to their defensive. This fight will probably go a lot easier if people will at least press something in this first phase, because I find this is where most of the battle reses go. Every single time I do this, even like on higher keys or like semi-highish, like mid-level, like 24 keys, is that people just won't press anything here and be like, oh my god, why did I die? But normally whenever somebody gets the spit, you make sure you're always targeting her. So we saw there, after she got up, in a second, because I rewound too much. No, I went forward too much. Anyways, she targeted the boomkin. She's going to target the boomkin. Alright, she's targeting the boomkin, so I immediately see that she targets the boomkin. I actually Verdant Embrace him a bit too early there, but the point is that I'm watching who it is. And then after I Verdant Embrace him, I get my Call of Viscera, I buff my Living Flame, and then I cast Living Flame on him. If you want to see my cast, you can always see them over here. He's also pressing Bark, he's going over here. He'll press Bear in case he's low, so he's always going to live. He's going to press Bear even though he's almost topped, just to be safe. So he bared, he barked. I gave him 2 heals there. And then on the like upcoming ones, the next one, I'm going to Time Dilation and stuff like that, and we're going to use Sack, and they all know that like if there's going to be an overlap because they have like a similar weak aura that tells them how close the interrupt is. In this case, it goes on the tank, so I still time dilate him because he's also getting the Storm Slam at the same time, which is kind of spooky. And the name of the game here is just making sure you're dropping correctly, trying not to get interrupted, and just doing DPS to get the boss low, but not actually below 50% until it's a good timing for us. Okay, so this next one is going out, and this next one is definitely going to be a decent overlap. The fourth one is usually the worst overlap, though. So this one, like when the Inferno Core is about to end, is when this is about to detonate as well. So this is 1.7 seconds, this is in 2 seconds. So in this case, he has Sack on him. I think he also uses his wall. Okay, yeah, he also uses wall, so he takes like no damage there. But yeah, that is a very scary overlap always on that third one there that you want to look out for. If you don't have another external like Blessing of Sack here, I would actually suggest you save your time dilate for that one, for the third one. And then we're going to get a fourth. Okay, I'm watching it's going on the rogue, so you can see as soon as that happens, I immediately hover over him. So this one is the interrupt into him getting the debuff. So he could cloak here if he wants, or he could just cheat death, or maybe I'll heal him in time. Looks like I did not heal him in time and he cheated. It's possible that I could have saved him there, but I guess I'm just old. And then now you can see that he just landed. He's at 52%. We've popped Lust, and we are going to be DPSing down the boss as much as possible. This is also, as soon as she starts flying in the air, or actually right now, is when I'm going to start setting up my stasis. Because we're going to get an Interrupting Cloudburst, and then right after that, the Inferno Core spits are about to go out. So I have TA'd, I VE'd my tank, and then I'm probably going to just put Dream Breath as the last thing in this, just to have everyone like topped going into this Inferno Core. And then going to this, you could, depending on the timing of like the Cloudburst or whatever is going on, you could just choose to detonate your stasis on this first one. But since I have Spirit Bloom available here, and I'm pretty sure that he's going to AG, he usually does the first one. Or we have Nature's Vigil rolling. Actually, I have Nature's Vigil this going. I'm probably just going to, yeah, I Spirit Bloom. I Spirit Bloom that one, he holds on to AG, and I still have my stasis for the next one that we get. Dropping in this phase is also important if you have someone who's capable of calling. I'm using this opportunity to staff right now. We're getting the next interrupt into the next flame spit about 1 second afterwards. So I'm going to press TA, reversion everyone. And then this is going to go out, and I'm just going to detonate my stasis and dispel. So we're probably getting one more. So I still have Tip the Scales, I still have Emerald Communion, and I still have Rewind available. So even if we got 3 more from this spot, I'd also still have Zephyr, we'd probably be fine. I could TD someone as well on one if I need to, like all that kind of stuff. You have plenty of tools in order to deal with this. I think the hardest part of this fight is definitely knowing when the interrupts are coming and seeing the overlaps that are happening. That is the most important thing, and that's usually how you screw yourself over, is when you get silenced on this fight. I would say that's the way most people will probably wipe as a healer. So as soon as that goes out, the Interrupting Cloudburst goes out, I VE'd, Lifebound everyone, and I'm Emerald Communioning before the Flame Spit even goes out, just so it ticks through the first couple ticks of it, and it gets us all topped going into it. So it heals us just fine through that. It just now ended. The final tick went out. And I have a 5-stack from my Living Flames there, and then the boss is going to die. And again, we got another one. I still have Tip the Scales. I still have Rewind, but I did Zephyr there as well. And outside of that, we're just going to single target this boss down. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me see what our final timer was. Wow, yeah, we almost had 2 minutes left. 1 death. Clean run. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something. Please leave any questions you have down in the comments below, or even better, please stop by my stream and ask me while I'm streaming. I always enjoy that a little bit more. It's a bit easier for me to answer. And thank you so much, and good luck in your next Ruby Life Pools.